The transport ship left them at the edge of the frozen valley and vanished into the clouds above. The wind followed soon after, howling across the white land like something alive. Elia's rook stood still for a moment, scanning the horizon through his visor. The planet was listed as a minor research outpost world, but it felt empty and dangerous, the kind of place where mistakes did not forgive you. Beside him stood Sally. She was smaller than Elia's lighter, her pale blue skin faintly glowing under the cold sun. Her silver hair was tied back in a simple braid, already dusted with ice crystals. She carried a slim pack and a translator unit clipped to her collar. Officially, she was a cultural liaison. Unofficially, she was here to observe humans up close. Elias adjusted his rifle and turned toward the temporary shelter half buried in snow a short distance away. "We should move," he said. "Storms coming sooner than expected." Sally nodded. "Your weather prediction was accurate, thank you." He did not respond. Compliments from aliens still felt strange. Humans were often spoken about as weapons, soldiers, or disasters waiting to happen, not as something that could be thanked. They reached the shelter quickly. It was a small research dome, old but intact. Elias forced the door open and stepped inside first, checking corners by habit. The air inside was cold but calm, no signs of life. He lowered his weapon. "Clear," he said. Sally followed, looking around with careful interest. "You always enter first," she said. "That's my job." She tilted her head. "To risk yourself before others." Elias shrugged and began unpacking supplies. "Someone has to." The shelter's power unit flickered weakly when he activated it. A dull orange light filled the room and a small heater hummed, struggling. Elias frowned. "That's not good. The temperature will continue to fall," Sally said after checking her wrist device. "This structure is insufficient for prolonged exposure." "I know," Elias said, "but it's all we've got until extraction." They worked in silence for a while. Elias reinforced the door and sealed cracks with emergency foam. Sally organized ration packs and medical supplies with precise movements. She was quiet but not fearful. That surprised him. When night came, it came fast. The light outside vanished, replaced by endless white darkness and screaming wind. The shelter shook under the storm's force. The heater dimmed again, then shut off completely. Elias cursed under his breath and knelt beside the unit. He tried restarting it twice. Nothing. Sally watched him closely. "It has failed." "Yeah," he said, "and backup's gone too." She looked around the small space, then back at him. "Then we must follow survival protocol." Elias glanced at her. "What protocol?" She hesitated, fingers tightening slightly around her pack strap. "My people have a custom," she said carefully. "In extreme cold, we conserve heat by remaining in direct contact." Elias froze. "Contact?" "Yes." He stared at her, then looked away. "You mean huddling?" "More than that," Sally said. "Close proximity, continuous." Elias felt heat rise to his face despite the cold. "I don't think command mentioned that." "They would not," Sally replied. "They consider it unnecessary or inappropriate." The shelter creaked loudly as the storm intensified. Elias could feel the cold creeping through his gloves, biting his fingers. "How cold does it get before it's dangerous for you?" he asked. Sally checked her device again. "We are already approaching that threshold." Elias exhaled slowly. He removed his helmet and set it aside. "All right," he said. "Show me." Sally's eyes widened slightly. "You agree?" "I don't like dying," he said simply. She nodded and moved closer, hesitating at the last moment. Elias sat down against the wall and unzipped his outer jacket, keeping his thermal layer on. Sally carefully removed part of her armor and sat beside him. She leaned in slowly, as if giving him time to stop her. When he did not, she pressed against his side. Her body was warm, warmer than he expected. "Is this sufficient?" she asked softly. "For now," Elias said, his voice steady. Minutes passed. Then Sally shifted closer, her arms wrapping around his torso. Elias stiffened. "This is part of the custom," she said quickly. Heat transfers best this way. He nodded once. Okay. Her head rested against his chest. He could feel her breathing, light and fast. Outside, something slammed into the shelter wall hard enough to make them both flinch. What was that? Sally whispered. Probably ice, Elias said, or something big. Her grip tightened. She pressed closer without realizing it, her fingers digging into his jacket. You're shaking, he said quietly. I am not cold, she replied. This is fear. Elias hesitated, then slowly lifted one arm and rested it around her shoulders, not pulling her closer, just holding her in place. You're safe, he said. I've got you. She went still. You say that easily, Sally murmured. It's true. She tilted her head slightly, listening to his heartbeat. Humans are taught confidence from birth. No, Elias said. We learn it when we have no other choice. The storm grew worse. The shelter lights finally died, leaving them in darkness. The only sound was the wind and their breathing. Time passed strangely after that. Elias stayed awake, alert, listening. Sally eventually relaxed against him, her breathing slowing. He stayed still, even when his muscles ached, even when cold seeped into his bones. At some point he felt her tremble again. Sally, he whispered. She stirred. I dreamed, she said, of home. Good dream, she shook her head. My people believe humans are dangerous, she said quietly. Predators without restraint. Elias did not answer. They warned me to never be alone with one, she continued. Especially in darkness. He swallowed. And now, she shifted, tightening her arms around him fully. Now I believe they were wrong. A loud impact struck the shelter again, closer this time. Elias reached for his rifle with his free hand. Stay still, he said. I trust you, Sally replied without hesitation. Something moved outside. Heavy footsteps circled the structure. Elias held his breath, listening, calculating. He did not move Sally away. He did not loosen his hold. After a long moment, the footsteps faded. Elias finally exhaled. Sally looked up at him. In the dim emergency glow of her wrist device, her eyes reflected light like distant stars. You did not push me away, she said. No, he replied. Didn't see a reason to. She studied his face as if memorizing it. This closeness, she said slowly, is not only about heat, it is about trust. When we hold someone, we accept responsibility for their survival. Elias met her gaze. Then I accept. She leaned into him again, resting her head against his chest. This time her grip was firm and intentional. Outside, the storm continued to rage. Inside the small shelter, a human and an alien held each other against the cold, against fear, against a galaxy that did not yet understand what humans truly were. Morning did not arrive with light. It arrived with silence. The storm slowly weakened, its loud voice fading into a low, distant howl. Elias opened his eyes after a night without real sleep. His body was stiff, his muscles sore from holding the same position for hours. Sally was still against him, her arms wrapped firmly around his chest. Her head rested under his chin, her silver hair warm against his skin. For a moment, Elias did not move. He listened. No wind hitting the walls hard, no footsteps outside, just the faint hum of Sally's wrist device. She stirred slightly, then froze when she realized she was awake. Elias, she whispered. I'm here, he said quietly. She slowly pulled her head back to look at him. Her eyes searched his face as if checking that he was real. You did not release me, she said. No, he replied. You needed the heat. And you, she asked, did you sleep? Enough. That was not true, but he did not want to worry her. Sally studied him for a long moment, then carefully loosened her grip and sat back. The cold returned immediately, sharp and sudden. The storm has passed, she said after checking her device, but the temperature is still dangerous. Elias nodded and stood up, stretching slowly. His joints protested. He checked the shelter door and reinforced seals. We'll move once the light improves, he said. Staying here too long isn't safe either. Sally rose and began putting her armor back on. Her movements were slower than before. Elias noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "I expended much energy last night," she said, "but I am alive, that matters." He handed her a ration pack. "Eat." She accepted it, then paused. "You give orders gently," she said. Elias shrugged. "Years of practice." They ate in silence. When the outside light finally grew strong enough, Elias cracked the door open. The valley was scarred with deep marks in the snow. Whatever had walked around the shelter was real and large. Saley leaned closer to see. "Those are not ice formations." "No," Elias said. "They hunt by sound." Her shoulders tightened. "Then we were fortunate." "No," he corrected. "We were quiet." They stepped outside carefully. The cold was brutal but manageable now. Elias led the way, scanning constantly. Saley stayed close, matching his steps without being told. After an hour of slow movement, Saley suddenly stopped. "Elias," she said softly. "There." He followed her gaze. A dark shape moved between distant rocks too smooth to be stone. "Get behind me," he said. She did not argue. The creature emerged fully. It was tall, four-legged, with thick armor-like skin, and a long head filled with clicking sensors instead of eyes. It turned toward them, sensing vibrations. Elias raised his rifle. The creature charged. Elias fired. The first shot bounced off its hide. The second struck a joint, slowing it but not stopping it. Snow exploded around them as it roared. "Run," Elias said. They ran. Saley struggled to keep pace, her legs shorter, her breathing fast. The ground dropped suddenly ahead, a narrow ravine. Elias turned, grabbed Saley around the waist and jumped. They landed hard on the other side. Elias rolled, shielding her body with his own as they hit the snow. Pain flared through his shoulder. The creature skidded to a stop at the edge, unable to cross. It roared in frustration, then retreated. Elias lay still for a moment, breathing hard. "You are injured," Saley said, panic rising in her voice. "I've had worse," he said, pushing himself up. She touched his shoulder carefully, her fingers trembled. "You did not hesitate," she said. "You used your own body to protect mine." "That's what partners do," Elias replied. "Among my people," Saley said slowly, "such an act creates a life debt." Elias looked at her. "I don't want a debt." She shook her head. "It is not something you can refuse." They continued moving until they reached an abandoned research relay station. The structure was cracked but stable. Elias sealed the door behind them and finally allowed himself to sit. His shoulder bled beneath his armor. Saley knelt in front of him and removed her gloves. "Allow me," she said. "You trained for this?" he asked. "No," she replied. "But I learned quickly." Her hands were gentle but precise as she cleaned and sealed the wound with medical foam. Elias watched her face. She was focused, serious, not afraid. "You were warned about humans," he said quietly. "Yes. And yet you trusted me." She looked up. "Because I observed you," she said. "You suffer silently, you protect instinctively. You stayed awake all night so I could rest." He said nothing. "My people believe closeness reveals truth," Saley continued. "Last night I learned much about humans." "What did you learn?" Elias asked. "That you are not predators," she said. "You are guardians." The relay station suddenly powered on. A weak signal pinged through the room. Elias stood. "That's our extraction beacon. Command will see it." Saley's expression changed, relief mixed with something else. "You will return to your people," she said, "and you to yours." "Yes," she hesitated. "When I report," she said softly, "I will speak the truth." Elias met her eyes. "That might cause trouble." "Truth often does," she replied. Hours later, the transport ship arrived. As the doors opened, cold air rushed in. Elias turned toward Saley. "You ready?" he asked. She stepped closer and did something unexpected. She wrapped her arms around him again, tight and deliberate, pressing her head against his chest just as she had the night before. "This is not for warmth," she said. "This is gratitude." Elias slowly returned the embrace. Around them, soldiers and crew paused, confused but silent. When they separated, Saley looked calm, strong. "Sleep customs," Elias said quietly. She allowed a small smile. "And something more." As the ship lifted into the sky, neither of them knew how much that night would change the galaxy, but both felt that nothing would ever be the same again. The transport ship broke through the cloud layer and left the frozen world behind. Inside, the noise of engines was steady and calm, very different from the wild wind they had escaped. Elias sat strapped into a side seat, his injured shoulder supported by a brace. Across from him sat Sally, hands folded, posture straight, her eyes focused on nothing in particular. Neither spoke for a long time. Other crew members moved around them, checking systems, sending reports, pretending not to stare. Humans were used to strange sights, but seeing a human soldier and an alien liaison sit so close, so quiet, carried a weight they could feel but not name. Finally, Sally broke the silence. "Elias," she said softly, using his name without hesitation now. "When we reach the station, we will be separated." "That's standard," he replied. "Yes," she said, "but I wish to understand something before that happens." He turned his head slightly to look at her. "Ask. Why did you choose to protect me?" she asked. "Not because of duty. I mean personally." Elias thought for a moment. He could give an easy answer. Orders, mission success, alliance politics, but none of those were true enough. "Because you trusted me," he said finally, "and because you needed me." Sally absorbed that, her fingers tightening slightly. "Among my people," she said, "trust is not given quickly. When it is broken, it can destroy families, entire communities." "I know," Elias said. "Humans aren't that different." The ship docked with the orbital station a few hours later. As soon as the doors opened, officials were waiting. Medical staff took Elias aside. Diplomatic guards surrounded Sally. She turned once as she was led away. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but something passed between them, an understanding built in silence and cold. Elias spent 2 days in medical recovery. His wound healed quickly by human standards, but the doctors insisted on rest. He lay in the small white room, staring at the ceiling, replaying moments in his mind. The storm, the shelter, the weight of Sally's arms around him, the way she had said she trusted him without fear. On the third day, a security officer appeared at his door. "Captain Rook," she said, "you're requested at a joint council hearing." "That was fast," Elias replied as he stood. "It's complicated," the officer said. The council chamber was large and circular. Humans sat on one side, aliens of many species on the other. At the center stood Sally. She looked smaller than Elias remembered, but her posture was firm, calm. The council leader spoke. "This hearing concerns allegations of cultural violation and manipulation during a joint mission." Elias' jaw tightened. Sally raised one hand. "I request permission to speak first." There was a pause, then approval. She stepped forward. "I was not manipulated," she said clearly. "I was protected, by choice, by trust, and by custom." Murmurs spread across the chamber. "Human Elias Rook followed no command beyond survival," she continued. "He respected my autonomy, my fear, and my traditions. He did not take advantage of closeness. He accepted responsibility." A council member leaned forward. "Your people reported humans as emotionally distant," Sally nodded. "That report was incomplete." She turned slightly, looking at Elias. "Humans endure in silence. They do not display emotion loudly, but they act on it deeply." When conditions were lethal, Elias Rook became shelter, warmth, stability. The chamber fell quiet. The human council representative spoke next. "Captain Rook," he said, "did you violate alien custom?" "No," Elias replied simply. "I followed it." "And did you coerce the liaison?" "No," Sally added. "He asked nothing of me, not loyalty, not silence, not gratitude." The council deliberated for hours. Elias stood still, shoulders straight, refusing to show fatigue. Sally remained calm, answering questions without hesitation. In the end, the ruling was clear. No violation, no punishment. But the impact went far beyond that room. Sally's official report spread quickly across the galaxy. It described humans not as predators or weapons, but as anchors, as beings who could endure suffering without losing compassion, as allies who protected without needing reward. Reclassification followed. Human military units were now labeled as stability forces rather than aggressive assets. For the first time in decades, alien governments requested human presence not for war, but for protection. Elias returned to active duty a week later. His shoulder still ached, but he welcomed the pain. It reminded him he was alive. One evening, as he prepared for his next deployment, a message appeared on his terminal. Diplomatic priority. Sender, Saley. He opened it. The message was short. I am stationed at the Helix Cultural Exchange. I requested human security. You were approved. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Their reunion was quiet. No crowds, no ceremony. Just a corridor on a neutral station, lights low, space visible through wide windows. Saley approached him slowly. You came. You asked, Elias said. She stopped in front of him. For a second, neither moved. Then, without speaking, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight. This time, Elias returned the embrace fully. This is not custom, she said softly against his chest. No, he replied. It's choice. They stood there for a long moment, two beings from different worlds, holding onto something fragile and strong at the same time. Outside the station, ships passed quietly through the stars. The galaxy continued to change, slowly, learning what humans truly were. Not monsters. Not conquerors, but something others could hold on to.